高い洞察力と正確な判断力、そして人間に対する的確な認識を持っていること。
You gotta be freaking kidding me! I can't do this! So I started playing Genshin at the start of 2023, and it's because there was no other game really like it out. I'd heard about Tower of Fantasy and some other super failures that were similar to Genshin, but I really hadn't been able to find another game like it, so I decided to give it a try, and to my surprise, I had a pretty good time. I previously made a video about my experience playing both Genshin and Honkai Star Rail, so if you want to watch that video, I pretty much came to the conclusion that if you're new to gacha titles, Genshin is the most approachable title. It's not to say that Honkai Star Rail is in any way worse. In fact, I think most of the community has decided at this point that Honkai Star Rail probably has the best story in gacha period, but especially as someone who's more of a fan of action titles right now rather than turn-based titles, even though I'm an old school JRPG fan, I will admit, there's just something about Genshin's gameplay that I found a lot more captivating, and especially as something that can sometimes be grindy. I found grinding in Genshin to be a little more enjoyable than in Honkai Star Rail. I'm talking about Hoyoverse titles when I should be talking about what's in the title of this video, Wuthering Waves. So what has Wuthering Waves done differently from Genshin and Honkai Star Rail and a lot of those other like big 3D gacha titles that has made me decide that Wuthering Waves is a better new player experience overall? Well, for the sake of this conversation, I'm just going to compare it to Genshin since that's what most people are doing anyway. A lot of the same mechanics that are in Genshin are present in Wuthering Waves, just done slightly differently, but there's a lot of ways in which I think Wuthering Waves has improved the Genshin formula more so than even Genshin has in the past few years. So this is why if you're trying to choose between Genshin and Wuthering Waves to be your first 3D gacha title, it should be Wuthering Waves. For one, this is pretty obvious. You're getting in on the ground floor. I think it's no secret that Wuthering Waves is a new game, whereas Genshin has been out since 2020, so it's been out for a total of 4 years at this point. That comes with its own unique set of challenges, especially since the greater Genshin community, they'll all tell you that Mondstadt and Liyue, which are the first two areas of Genshin Impact, are the most boring. And they're not kidding. As someone who got through Mondstadt and Liyue pretty recently, it felt like an outdated open world title. It really did. And even when I got into Inazuma, Inazuma's story takes a second to get going, so I started to get really bored really fast. And I kind of felt like I was forcing myself to complete the content. Additionally to that, I felt extremely behind in comparison to some of my friends that played the game. They had all reached endgame, they had really good teams, whatever. But it wasn't just the fact that they were more powerful than me, because obviously if you're playing an MMO or something like that, your higher level peers are going to seem much more OP than you, and like, as soon as you get to that point, you're gonna feel OP too. Like, that's kind of a given. No, the thing about being behind in a gacha game, there is such a large roster of characters that you don't have access to that sometimes come back in a banner, but for the most part, you're getting newer characters and then newer characters and then newer characters, and it can be hard to go back and collect those older characters. Even if you wanted to whale for the game, right? If you wanted to spend all your money, spend thousands of dollars trying to collect all of the characters in this game, it's kind of hard to do that because they're not always available. So that can be kind of a downfall of something like Genshin in terms of its longevity, right? And I don't know what the answer is to this problem, by the way, and I'm not saying that Wuthering Waves has solved this in any way. It will probably end up feeling the same once we get into a few years of Wuthering Waves, but it's a hard thing to create a good new player experience where the new player doesn't feel left out when your gacha game is wholly dependent on releasing new characters that are stronger, better, faster. I think I've explained that enough. So we're going to move on to the next thing that I think Wuthering Waves has going for it when it comes to the new player experience. And that has to do with the fact that it is running on Unreal Engine 4, I believe. a lot of people are saying that because it's running on Unreal Engine 4, that means that we're seeing performance drops on mobile and we're seeing performance drops on PC and etc., etc. I think the thing that Unreal Engine 4 does a lot better with than Unity, which is what Genshin is currently running on, is that Unreal Engine 4 has a lot of tools that make making an open world title easier and look better. It's quite impressive the way that Genshin has been able to build its open world title on an engine that is not necessarily built for that purpose. Unity doesn't have a lot of tools in terms of out of the box making an open world game. Unity isn't as powerful of an engine as Unreal Engine 4. And I think we're going to see that return in terms of using a more powerful engine as the game goes on. We're already kind of seeing it. If you do have a PC or a phone that is capable of running this game, you will see, and this is going to be a controversial statement, you will see that the graphics look so much better than Genshin does, especially if you're comparing the starting zones. That's not even to mention the character models. The level of detail they are able to apply to these character models is already great. But as time goes on and newer phones are released and older ones are phased out, they're going to be able to use the full power of this engine to really give us some great looking environments, some great looking characters, possibly upgrade the characters we already have. Whereas, I think if you look at some of the character models in Genshin, especially for some of the characters that have been in the game since the start, you know, you can see a visible difference between some of the newer characters and someone like Amber or Venti. And it's not an easy problem for them to solve, especially when it comes to the character animations, because these character models were built 4 years ago, and so they're just outdated at this point. Wuthering Waves is a more recent title. It has better character animations because of that, and that's something that Genshin can't really compete with when it comes to like showing a new player experience, right? Time is Genshin's enemy a lot of the time here, but so some of the things that I think Wuthering Waves has improved upon in terms of the Genshin formula is the combat. The combat between Wuthering Waves and Genshin Impact, I think it's incomparable. If you play Genshin Impact, you realize, okay, this is a very casual game. That isn't to say that Wuthering Waves isn't. I think Wuthering Waves can be played casually. The combat isn't that difficult, but the thing that they did right is that they created a combat system that is easy to understand, but hard to master. And you see that when you see some of the endgame content of the game. The game can get very difficult, but it's not necessary to challenge that difficult content in order to enjoy the game. It is a choice. And I think the fact that they have found a balance between catering to casual gacha fans that just kind of want to play the story, collect their characters, do whatever, and people that actually want to play a challenging game is something that Genshin hasn't really been able to do. I think that if you aren't a casual games fan, you're probably not playing Genshin Impact. And I think you see that like want to cater to a more hardcore audience from Wuthering Waves, even in the way that they present art style and characters. I think that it has a much more mature look to it than Genshin does. A lot of the characters look a lot more adult. You do have some like chibi characters like Verena and several others, but they're not as fluffy as the Genshin characters, and even the story that's being told here is a little bit on the darker side. I don't think it's unapproachable, so I think that people who are casual gacha enjoyers can still enjoy the game, and in the way of catering to both a casual and hardcore audience, they've actually managed to expand who the game might appeal to. I do have one more thing that I think Wuthering Waves at the moment has above Genshin, and that is the fact that it's a lot more generous. Now, I started my new player journey in Genshin last year, and I did get a lot of free stuff. I am not going to deny that. However, I got free stuff in terms of currency and not a lot of free pulls. And this is something that's people have been talking about a lot, and they're saying, well, of course, Wuthering Waves is going to give you free pulls. They're trying to pull in a player base. But that, in my mind, regardless of the reasons why they're doing it, is another reason why, if you want to be a new player in the 3D gacha space, it's better to go with Wuthering Waves, because they're going to treat you a lot better and give you a lot more free stuff that'll actually help you gain entry into playing the game. Even if you're not min-maxing, like, and going for like a Calcharo, Verina, Yinlin build, still people want to feel invested and want to get a character that they enjoy playing or enjoy looking at or whatever. And by giving them their choice of character with some of the vouchers that we're being given and giving us weapons that can go with that character, it creates investment. And I think as a new player, especially if it's something you haven't played before, that's what you're looking at. You're asking the game to hook you. You're like, okay, show me something cool, show me something amazing. And I think that by being so generous, they've actually created an environment where the barrier to entry is just playing the game. And now that they have so many people hooked on the game, I think that we're gonna see a lot of growth because they're gonna tell their friends about it and tell their friends about it. It's very smart. I think what they're doing is very smart. Lastly, I'm not saying that WUA has no problems whatsoever, because obviously the English voice acting is not up to snuff. As they're fixing bugs, the game is getting better. I noticed a little bit of stuttering yesterday, but when I played today, after a bunch of updates, they released a bunch of updates. I no longer had any stuttering, and I was surprised I had stuttering because I have a 3080 Ti, so it's a pretty good graphics card and CPU setup and everything. Like, I have an i9. But it was stuttering, you know? The one thing I do want to say to all the Genshin fans that are talking shit on WUA and saying, why does it have so many problems on launch, blah, blah, blah. Every freaking game now has problems on launch, dude. Even Genshin had problems on launch, and don't say that it didn't, because we all have seen the Genshin bug doc that's still filled with hundreds of bugs to this day, okay? The other thing is that AAA titles are releasing with bugs now. I mean, Elden Ring is a freaking masterpiece, but remember on launch when it had all these freaking performance issues and people were pissed. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be pissed, but what I am saying is that I think we're being unnecessarily harsh because we're upset that a game that might be better than our game just released, you know? So I think the feral fan base needs to take a good look in the mirror and realize that the call is coming from inside the house, okay? The issue with WUA is inside you. It's not the game itself. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. Also, I'm sorry I haven't been on. If you're watching this and you are a longtime viewer of mine, I made a couple of announcement videos, but I've been really busy with like the whole band thing. We just hit 1,000 followers on TikTok, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I do kind of want to get back into just like putting my little opinion pieces out there on the internet again, because I do think it's fun to just like ramble at you guys about whatever it is that I'm playing at the moment. So if you like this, let me know. Maybe I'll talk about WUA some more, especially from this lens of like not really playing that many 3D gachas, and kind of give you guys my feelings, especially once I finish the story. I'm about halfway through right now. Once I finish the story, I'd love to tell you guys my overall thoughts on it. But yeah, so far I'm enjoying the game. I like it, and I think that this might be one that I actually stick with from the long haul because I got in early. I'm not behind like I am with Genshin, and the gameplay is really, really solid. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. This is Scarlet Rain, and I'll talk to you guys soon. See ya!